My name is Esther Wavinya. Esther is a mother of two. Esther loves reading. Esther loves studying. And she's a very, very curious human being. She's a Pan-African enthusiast. And she loves development. She's looking to live in a world whereby there's social justice. I'm an avid reader, as you can see. I just find solace and enthusiasm when I'm reading. It's really engaging to turn a page after another one, getting imbibed into that world of literature.
Take us through your shelf.
Oh my. This shelf didn't start just recently. I started reading when I was in class, I think three or four.
Class 3.
Yes.
Nice.
My mom is a retired teacher, and during her tenure in teaching, she used to. There's a time I think there was a project brought by I think the Americans. They wanted each child in Africa to read. So luckily, my mom was the head of the Nairobi province library, and oh my, I remember turning page by page the books of Goosebumps, Samantha, Nancy Drew. So by 10 years, by the time I was 10 years, I found myself reading. Yeah, because I remember we used to read, can't remember those two stories, but I remember we used to read two small books. I think Peter Pan or something. But what I remember mostly is reading the Samantha series, the Nancy Drew series, and sometimes James Hadley Chase. I was a kid, I didn't know, but I read James Hadley Chase. And I kept on advancing. I started reading in high school. I used to read Daniel Steele, Sidney Sheldon, and those books put me together. They put me, why am I saying that they put me together? They gave me an imagination of a world that I thrived to live in. They gave me, especially when you read Sidney Sheldon's Daniel Steele, you find that they empower women. You find that most of the characters are women who are either in the media industry, politics, or corporate world, and they're making mega changes. So reading Daniel Steele series and Sidney Sheldon in high school opened me to a vista of new opportunities, but they were just in my imagination. So from there, I created some of the Daniel Steele books are here, as you can see on the downer shelves. So those are books that I was reading in my high school years.
Yeah.
So I graduated. That's how you see the books are arranged in order that I read them.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. I think that makes the difference between me and you, because for me in high school I wasn't a reader. In fact, I struggled through reading our set books and all those books, and I had to read some of them because they were gonna be examined. Had there not been exams, I don't think so. I think slowly with time I picked up the culture of reading, and that's why I got so interested in doing this podcast, to just get to interact with people who I think have read more than me,
Uh-huh, that's nice.
grasp that wealth of the things they've picked up. But what are some of the most impactful reads? I'm sure we cannot pick all of them. That just by looking at this shelf, you can say this and this and this and this was so impactful reads for me.
Okay, I can say The Signature of All Things. That's a book that I read after high school. This one there, and
Signature.
The
Of
Signature of All Things here.
this one.
Yes, by Elizabeth Gilbert. Elizabeth Gilbert is the one who's written Eat, Pray, and Love, and that book took me to a world of botany because I walked through her garden and that's how I even started loving flowers because it gave me vivid imaginations of how living in an environment where the environment and the flowers, the plantation, flora and fauna flourish because of human taking care of them. And I think reading this made me want to live in such an environment. I love green spaces. I love hanging out in Karura. I love hanging out where there's nature. And I'm so glad that I'm going to University of Cambridge, where the Garden of Eden resides.
Ah,
Yes.
what does flowers do to you?
They give me power. They give me, they actually tap into my feminine aspect. And I just love the smell. And then they are natural. You know, we are all entwined with nature. So living in urban area whereby you just see a one flower, one tree a meter apart, makes me just want to have flowers near me. But flowers, they, for me, they symbolize unity
Yeah.
with one and one with the all.
All right.
Yes.
So currently, what are you reading?
I've been delving into the Pan-African world. This talks about contemporary Africa. It's called the African Long Road Since Independence. But let's talk about this.
Yeah.
This one shows us, talks about corruption. It talks about our statehood as Africans, because we are not democratic per se, and then it makes you even question democracy, because after independence we thought that the world thought that Africa is going to thrive, but we have actually, I think, we're the most poorest continent in the world. The East is coming up with the Tagan Asians, so for them they are putting their house in order. But when you come to Africa, we are mad into the murkiest of the murkiest in terms of leadership. So I wanted to understand, why are we living the way we're living? So this gives you the real contemporary history, because everything is historical, and then now you understand why, what is happening right now in Africa as a whole.
You know, it's said that corruption is all over the world, but
Yeah.
sometimes I tend to feel like African corruption is on another level. What are your thoughts on corruption in Africa? And I'm sure when I'm looking at some of the books, the state of Africa, this is also one I'm very interested in.
Yeah.
And as you speak about that, I'm seeing the looting
The
machine.
looting machine. Actually, I wanted to answer your question,
Yeah.
the corruption question, citing the looting machine. When you read the looting machine, you come to realize that, yes, Africans are corrupt, but it is an international crisis. Africans are corrupt because the democracy that we are, I think we have a briefcase democracy. When you look at Africa and issues of corruption, it tags along the international community. It tags along the international cooperation. It tags along even sometimes the international organizations. And you wonder, is this an African corruption way of life, or it's an international crisis? Because when you peruse through the looting machine, you will realize a lot of these multi-national corporations, they partake in the looting of the African mineral resources. They work and collude with the African leaders. So then corruption becomes relative. But when they say that Africans are corrupt, they normally forget to mention these international corporations. They only mention African as a state. They mention various states, but they forget that these multinational corporations, they have their host nations. Corruption is a global crisis, and we don't talk about it the way it's supposed to be talked about. We only blame where the perpetrators, but we don't blame the other faces of corruption that are normally hidden from the international sphere and the media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How should we talk about corruption?
When we talk about corruption, we should talk about democracy. Our democracy is a briefcase democracy.
What do you mean when you say briefcase democracy?
Because a leader is put inside a briefcase. Let's say, for example, Mobutu Sese Seko in Congo. When he was actually put into leadership by CIA, and they funded him. And because their national interest was being taken care of, Congo suffered a lot. Congo lost a lot in terms of human capital, human lives, development, and their natural resources. Then other players came in, apart from now the international community. The regional players slipped in because, I mean, everybody wanted a cake of Congo, and that's why Congo is where it is. The phone that you have there, part of the body parts, they come from the coltan in Congo. So you find everybody's interest is there. Everybody is looking at their national interest, their corporate interest. They don't look at the human interests. So they normally say nowadays in the contemporary politics, international politics, that security has shifted from the nation state to human. So it's more of human centric. But still, we still have briefcase democracy. Why do I keep on saying briefcase democracy? When you read the State of Africa, it gives you history of how good leaders like Patrice Lumumba were killed to put someone like Mobutu. Other leaders in Africa, all African nations after independence, the leaders that were put there were the leaders that were going to drive the international community interests, not the interests of the locals. So you find that, what is democracy? So there are various scholars who were actually asking about the function of statehood and democracy. Are they really going to be sustainable? Are we going to have states in the long run? Are we going to have international communities driving? Because you find so many international corporations, their income revenue is way beyond a nation state. And then they have their leader that they feel this leader is going to drive our vision. So that's how Africa failed. It's rising, but it failed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm looking at this book, The Looting Machine, and I can see 30% of the world's oil and mineral, 14% of the world's population, 43% of the world's poor. Why is the richest continent also the poorest?
Exactly.
And this book is, I can see, is here, The Looting Machine is a searing expose.
Yes.
You who've read it,
Yeah.
what are some of the things that you read and felt like, for real?
I was so shocked to learn that most of the leaders, they are actually leading their states because these superpowers are controlling them. And if you don't do what they want you to do, they will fund the opposition. So I realized through the State of Africa, the Looting Machine, also this one that I've started reading currently. And it makes you wonder, how did Lee Kuan do it differently? The former president of Singapore. This one, they were a third country, way poorer than us. Actually, there's a part when you read, he says, rich countries like Nigeria and Kenya, and you wonder,
From third world to first.
yes. You wonder, one day we were way richer than Singapore? When he was building the Singapore economy, he didn't delve into excessive taxation because he realized he's going to kill high performance. If we are all taxed, every day you're taxed, because nowadays I feel like the continent of Africa, it's all about taxation.
Yeah.
If we don't balance, it will mean that, why am I working hard to have all my money go to taxation. So we need to balance. Our leaders, they need to balance on matters taxation. Yes, people should pay tax, but there should be a balance so that they don't kill the high performance.
I feel like as a country, we are somewhere there because there's been this whole conversation on
Yeah.
taxation and some people saying pay tax, additional tax. The economists who are saying you're overburdening the economy with. What do you think worked for Singapore that moved them from a third world country to a first world country?
Their leadership, that one is the first thing that they worked on. From the onset, once they got their independence, for them it was all about giving the people what they deserve as human beings. Likwan and his team, because he didn't work alone. He worked with a team, and they were soaking on corruption. If you found engaging in anything corruption, si kama huku kwetu stories za abunuwasi tunapelekwa koti, then after 2 days unatolewa. You are fired and you are imprisoned. So even if you are the best friend, he will do that. There's a time a very close friend of his was involved in corruption dealings in matters construction. Likwan fired him, and the guy committed suicide because he knew the next step is going to prison. And Likwan was a bit sympathetic, but he said no. That is what he espouses. So what he also did was changing the mindset of the people that he's going to govern, and then they worked together. He motivated his countrymen to take him to this journey of making Singapore the Singapore we have currently. Because not as everybody wants to go to Singapore. It's the green, beautiful, lushy city. I will also want to go there one day. And it's because he changed the mindset of the people, he changed the attitude of the people, and they all worked together. Ni kama tu familia. They decided, you know what, for this house to grow and achieve its highest potential, let's work together. He came up with housing project that worked. There was no corruption that was involved, and anybody who was found engaging in corruption activities fired. Akukuwa nati like, oh no, ati mtu wangu fired, done, imprisoned. But what do we do here?
When you say that, it almost feels like history is repeating itself locally because we are in a situation where we're talking about affordable housing.
Yeah.
The government is pushing that agenda of creating affordable housing. And what do you think the government of Kenya must borrow from what Singapore did if at all this affordable housing conversation is to succeed?
First, actually, every time when the conversation about affordable housing was hitting the media houses, everybody in the leadership, including the president himself, they were talking about Singapore. Singapore had this and it succeeded, and we are emulating them. But you find there's a lot of gaps in terms of leadership. So if they want to go by what Lee Kuan did, they should foster economic development and ensure there's no one who's taking kitu ati chini ya nini, unasukumia mtu tenda chini ya meza, no. Let everybody who's getting a contract, a tender, let it be on merit, let it be on performance. City unaongeza prices because we see situ nasikia barabara, a train ilijengwa Tanzania costing this much, but when you come to Kenya, it's like double the price, and you're like, okay.
And in fact, it looks
na hiyo ni train ya 19 Ngotekisa.
Yes. I'm hearing you talk about two things.
Yeah.
I'm hearing talk about trust. I'm hearing you talk about goodwill.
Yes.
How important are those two things as ingredients of a successful legacy of a leader?
They're very important because if a leader does not have people who are trustworthy and they actually ensure that they keep to their manifesto, then the legacy fails. it will be the same thing, a vicious circle. We will not see the difference between Moi's time, Uhuru's time, now Ruto's time, until we are until the top leadership is very strict on matters corruption, on matters public funds. We should ensure we actually clip anywhere you find that there's like a gap, there's like a loophole, you clip. And it will take a lot of goodwill, change of attitude na mindset, kwa sababu Kenya kila kitu ni about kitu kidogo.
Do you think it's our culture? Do you think it's how we are conditioned, or it can happen to anyone?
Personally, when you read the history of the state of Africa,
now we have to talk about the state of Africa.
We had a very horrible colonial period. And nowadays we talk about the mind. We talk about mental issues. Actually, mental health nowadays is the biggest issue. So sometimes when you read about the historical journey of Africa as a whole, you wonder, are our leaders behaving the way they're behaving because of mental health issues? When you read The Unbowed by my favorite lady, Wangari Maathai,
yes,
she talks about life in the 40s, how the colonizers behaved, how they behaved toward Africans. Same description given during the colonization era is the same description Martin Meredith gives after independence. Then you go to the long journey of Africa since independence. You find it's the same, but different players, same
the
story.
narrative is the same.
Yes.
When you go through the state of Africa, what did this book do to you? What has it left you with?
It has left me in a place that I ask a lot of questions. I was so shocked to learn that Uganda and Rwanda participated in disintegrating Zaire. They actually championed for Kabila. Like, I think a dictator someone comes in showing that they have very good will for the nation, but then they come in and become something else. And then I read about Sudan, the Darfur War, and all the parties. I realized we have a lot of issues when it comes to ethnicity and a religion. Instead of assimilating, we are disintegrating. Religion and ethnicity plays a bigger role in Africa, despite whichever part of Africa you come, the south, the east, the west, the central. Yeah. Ethnicity and religion are the key issues. It matters us not living in harmony. Yes.
You know, when you think about this, you talk about the Scramble and Partition of Africa.
Yeah.
You remember the history of the Scramble and Partition of Africa
during colonization.
Yes.
Now this one talks about the Scramble and Partition of Africa, not now with the colonizers, with African leaders. So sometimes you ask, is it something that they felt, now I have power, I'm going to behave like my colonizer? Because same issues that we had during colonial period are the same issues on matters land, issues on matters division of labor. There's people who are very, very rich, people who are very, very poor, and people even who don't know what they're doing in this life because of the setup. So I don't know if it's something that we took from colonization all the way to the 1960s and early 2000s, but I'm glad now people are saying something different. And I don't know what is happening because the francophones, there's an interesting lady who said she doesn't like the term francophone and anglophone because it symbolizes neocolonialism. Anyway, the francophone Africans, they're having coups.
Yes.
So we're asking, is this coup going to embetter them or is it going to divide them further? If we go by history through the state of Africa, all the coups, none actually amounted to anything. There was no transformative agenda that was brought about by any coup. It was all about a sap of power. It was all about leaders taking power, and once they're there, they become someone like Taylor of Liberia.
Yeah.
And they even put children. If you read the history of Liberia through the state of Africa, and then the child will be great, the
We will
first
talk about that.
African
We will talk
woman.
about that because it's one of the books I know you're very emotional about.
So
But Esther, allow me to as I conclude this whole topic, so that we get to experience other things on your shelf.
yeah,
Africa has experienced, I think there are 7 coups in the last 1 year.
yeah,
And when you look at that, when you look at this, when you look at what you're talking about, is there a bigger hand to the coup? Because sometimes you ask yourself, when you think about the I'm avoiding to use the democracy statement. When you think about a country, for example, there's a military, there is the police force, there is the people. Something that you're noting is that there's almost a very swift transition with the people who've fronted the coup. So sometimes you're tempted to ask, is there a bigger hand to the coups? And sometimes I look at for example, Gabon. I saw the president was released a few days after the swearing in of the leader who took over. And sometimes, and it got to a place I was asking myself, why does this thing look so acted?
imagine, I don't think it's acted, because when you peruse through the state of Africa, because that book has gazillion of coups after independence, you find that every leader comes in saying, "Oh, I'm going to give my people this," but they don't live by their promises. While they don't do that, opposition here is brewing, and sometimes, okay, according, I don't want to say, sometimes I want to quote history, because for us to understand the present world, we must understand history.
Yeah.
From the history as narrated by Martin, it shows us that most of these coups had an invisible hand, and mostly the invisible hand was coming from the Western world, or some even the Eastern world. There was power play between the US and the Russians, and most of the time it was during the Cold War. And I, from an international politic perspective, I would say that we are having a very cold war going on between the Russians and the West world, because when you look at the international community, there's a lot going on. We have the Ukrainian war, we have NATO here, we have Putin here, and then we have Africa. So I normally feel that Africa is a pawn in all this. And it is during the Cold Wars that most of the coups take place. Because when you look at the Cold War that happened in from 1947 all the way to the fall of Berlin, so many coups took place. So many people, leaders were executed, presidents and opposition leaders. Coups were just happening. It was a normal thing to have a coup. Most of the presidents in Liberia, in Congo, in Rwanda, in Uganda,
Yeah.
to mention but a few, every president was coming in through a coup.
Yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, Kenya, none of the coups succeeded.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think maybe, I don't know if it's because we don't have minerals. I don't know.
We have oil and
Which we
water
don't
in
know, even
Turkana.
we don't.
And the cradle of mankind is right here in the 254. But I saw the other day the AU launched a report about the illegal acquisition of power that has become very rampant especially in Africa. And when you look at that, when you look at the international politics, you as an international relations student, do you think there is democracy?
I don't think there's democracy. Democracy is fictitious. democracy depends on an interest of a hegemony or the world hegemonic states. So sometimes you might think this is democracy, but it's democracy because our interests is the interests of the US.
Yeah.
And you find that most of African states, they live in a welfare society, not an economic development society. Because that's actually what differentiates us with the Eastern Tigers. Because for them, they decided, you know what, we are going to work on our social economic empowerment rather than the welfare. Sisi kila saa, oh, donors, oh, yeah. There's a video I watched just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
A lady, one of the best Pan-Africanist in our contemporary Africa politics, she was talking about international community in Africa. And we signed treaties through the structural adjustment programs that forfeit us from doing a lot of things. And you find that a country like France will go to the Francophone nations, take their minerals, take everything that they have, they sell to the world, they make profit. But as we get those funds as loans, and we pay a huge percent of that in terms of loan fee.
Because when you look at the donor world, because I was when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about the Scramble and Partition of Africa is still happening.
Yeah.
But it's happening now financially.
Yes.
Because you hear people are given sanctions.
Yeah.
When you're looking at African ideologies, there are certain countries that are told you have to support certain ideologies or risk losing support, financial support from country A or country B. And I don't think Africa will ever be free. I think it's getting tighter even by the day.
It's so funny when you talk about sanction. I met a client of mine who's from Sudan. They're having civil war there. So we were talking about sanctions and everything, and he told me something that actually was very interesting. He told me, you know what? We are sanctioned. A lot of Sudan's economical empowerment resources are sanctioned. But when it comes to the Arabian gum, whereby I learned that Sudan produces 70% of the of the gums that we have, the jellies, the whatever, they have that plantation. So they produce 70%. That is the only thing that is not sanctioned, because
the world
needs it. So economy of interest, economy of the superpowers. You see?
Wow.
Yeah.
Esther, I want to move away from the Pan-African conversation because we might start crying here when you delve deep into the realities of what is happening but
in this continent of ours.
I've known you to, by the way, if self-belief was a human being, Esther would be self-belief. What has driven you?
I think books. Actually, you see, when they say if you want to hide something from an African, do it in a book. So I think through reading, in my tender years, it actually gave me a world of imagination. I saw that world through my mind, and I believe that I'm gonna live it. And I think the power of the books keeps someone going, keep someone balanced. There might actually we live in a world.
What worked, Esther? Because when you talk about books, it sounds like everybody keeps encouraging people, read.
You see when you
what
read.
is that practical thing that worked for you that if somebody listens to you today would say, I want to try that?
When you read a book like The Best Laid Plans, you see someone being distracted by so many things in the world. But later, when you finalizing the last pages, the book ends making that person heroic. So I took that from the books that I read, the fictional books that I read, and put it in my life. I was like, okay, the life is hitting me with lots of distractions, but I must keep on going, because through reading, when you read the fictional books, you'll realize, oh, this person is going through a lot of things, but later they emerge winners. So those pages, I took them and I lived them. So when the world was offering me negativity, when the world was trying to dim my light, when the world was trying to show me that I can't, I show the world that I can.
What's your kind of books? Because do you have a, let me ask, do you have a preferred genre of books?
When it comes to self-development, there's so many books. There's so many books. And it's so funny that I would even quote fictional books, because that's where the story starts.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I'm reading mostly books that talk about the mind, because there's a lot of power in the mind. Our mind has invisible powers, powers that can make us fly, like that thing in the Red Bull thing.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, I started reading. I read Think and Grow Rich with Napoleon Hill. Having come from a very humble background, I needed to emancipate myself, empower myself, and live a world that is just for me.
Think and Grow Rich.
Yes, because if you want to change the world, you must first change yourself. And how do you do that? For me, I think reading worked for me, because even my friends who read, reading has worked for them. Their lives are changing from this mindset to this mindset, because that's what books did to me. In reading Think and Grow Rich with Napoleon Hill opened me to a different life. It made me realize, oh, we have the conscious mind, the subconscious mind. You can tap into your subconscious mind, that is imagination, and as you thinketh, becometh. And then these books, these self-help books, they relate with the Bible. The Bible says, knock, seek, and the other one I've forgotten. There's knock, there's seek, and the other one, remind me?
Knock and the door shall be open. Seek and,
And
you
then
shall find. Ask and
Ask,
you
I'll
shall
be
be
given.
given. Yeah.
So everything is just packed in those three wordings. Knock, seek, ask.
It's interesting that you say that a fictional book transformed you at some point, but there is always this debate. It was just fiction. It is out there. It's not realistic, and I think some fictional books people tend to take them with less seriousness, if I can say. How does it work for you?
In my Esther years, I'll say that books done by Sidney Sheldon and Daniel Steele, they had these heroic stars, and the stars, most of the stars were women, and they will go through a series of challenges, either at their work, relationships, their homes, their family, and all that stuff. And also, I read The Godfathers, the mafias and everything, and I was like, people go through a lot of things, because if you read The Godfathers, there's a point that one of the sisters was pregnant, and how the abortion took place, oh, it was inhumane, but she survived. And later, through that depressing moment, that destructive moment, she awakened herself and she became one of the mafias and controlled even the brothers. But when she stopped looking at herself as a woman, because the Godfathers, I love the Godfathers because they portray our society, not now, but in the 90s, it was basically patriarchal. And I hate patriarchy. Anyway. So, but fiction,
Yeah.
nowadays I rarely do fictions. Nowadays I do a lot of autobiographies.
Yeah.
Something also that really, really motivated me was Dreams from My Father by Barack Obama. He's one of my best human beings in the world. And then The Child Will Be Great. Oh my.
I can see that. This child will be great.
This Child Will Be Great. I felt like that book was talking to me. Because Sir Alif Johnson went through very tormenting moments in her life. She didn't go back. She went back to school when she had, like, I think 4 kids. Is it 4 or 3 or 5? She went back to school at an advanced age when she was a mother, and she aced it, and she went to Harvard. And I'm going to Cambridge.
Oh,
The child is going to be great.
this child will be great. Africa's first.
The child is actually great.
The child is already great.
Yes.
And I will come to you. I'm trying to save the best for the last.
Yeah.
But I know you've been a great fan of Sir Alif Johnson. What is that thing you always feel was similar in her quest to achieve what she wanted with yours?
I normally feel like we mirror each other, and she is my mentor, but I've never met her. I hope I meet her before the world takes us away. With Sir Alif, she didn't give up. She used to love politics way when she was a younger girl, but life happened. She got married. She got kids. She became a housewife, but she didn't give her up on her dreams. She went back to school. She worked for the best international organizations like the World Bank, the UN, something that I always aspire to do also. And later on, she became a leader, and she was actually the first African female president. So she's already a trailblazer in everything that she does. And she is one of the people that tried to change, because Liberia had a lot of child soldiers through most of them actually came to be during the regime of Taylor. And Sir Alif gave them motherhood, and some of them reformed, and she left a legacy because now she's an international icon. She's won a Nobel Prize in Matters Peace, because she really fought for peace in Liberia. She's lived in Kenya also. She worked for the UN in Kenya. Yeah, somewhere in Bodaiga.
Across the street.
Yeah.
Esther, you also went back to school.
Yes.
And I think that is one of the most outstanding things I would say I admire about you. Why did you go back to school?
Because I didn't want to resign to fate. I had dreams. I remember reading one of the quotes by Warren Buffett saying that that was before even I went to school, back to school. He said that the reason why he is rich is because he's competing with half the population. So I probed further. I realized, oh, women are considered not go-getters. Women are considered just motherly. But the women who are trailblazers in their different capabilities. And someone like Condoleezza Rice, I remember in 2001, she was all over media after the 9/11 thing, and I loved everything about her. And I was like, oh my God, I want to be a diplomat. I want to be in politics. I want to be global. I want to go international. That's why those dreams kept me going. And I went back to school when I was 30. And I got my first class.
I'm always very encouraged to know that you went back to school at 30. But also, you had a child when you're still young. I think when now you are just almost starting to experience life. How did that affect your life?
Definitely, when you get a child in your 20s, early 20s, it throws you back. because first of all, now you need to work on the basics, that is food, accommodation, clothing. And it's not easy because you're not employed, you're still trying to find your footing in the world. Yes. So it comes with a lot of, I wouldn't say baggage per se, but it throws you back. Yes. And taking off from there, it requires a lot of willpower and very strong mindset.
I think we need to celebrate the fact that you had a first class honors and you're going now. You have a full scholarship to the University of Cambridge. But where are the other girls you were with at that age?
I'll say that everybody chooses their path. For me, education, that is study, has always been at the core of my everything despite distractions. And because I love equality, I love being part of the people who are driving the sustainable development agenda, and I want to see a more equitable world. I felt like if I don't play a role in ensuring that the world becomes a better place, then I'll become statistics. So I didn't want to be statistics in terms of people who are not able to reach their full potential. So that's why I kept on pushing myself despite the life distractions.
Did you think you'll come this far?
Yes, imagination. Einstein always says imagination is better than knowledge. So my imagination kept me going on because I believe that one day I'm going to go back to school. It doesn't matter when. It took me 10 years to go back to school to start with a diploma, but I didn't give up.
Yeah.
Yes.
It almost sounds like stories are Java. Are you telling us to really take keen interest on the stories of Java that are in your head?
Yeah, because imaginations drives us. The power of the mind keeps you going. So if you lose that power, you lose everything. They say, as the mind thinketh, so it is. First, you need to work on your within so that it can reflect on your without. So that's why people are encouraged to do meditation. I do meditation. That's why people are encouraged to be curious, because curiosity, they say curiosity killed the cat, but I think that is a very wrong phrase. Curiosity empowers. Curious beings. Have you ever seen children? You have kids, so you've seen how curious they are at their tender ages.
Yeah.
And I started reading a lot of mind books, and I came to realize you have to tap back into your inner child. So I think I didn't let that inner child
Yeah.
that drived me then to dive in at my advancing years. I kept that child alive. So everybody should keep that child alive, because when you're a kid, when you ask, what do you want to be? I want to be an engineer. I want to be a pilot. I want to be. So that child should be kept alive so that your mental capability will strengthen. And despite everything that is thrown your way, you'll be able to go for what you want.
Yeah.
Because right now, as I'm seated here, I'm already seeing myself as a game changer, as a policy maker. I'm seeing myself helping younger girls go back to school, girls who've already got into the motherhood, and also encouraging those who've not gone tend to the motherhood arena. They should concentrate on building themselves, because when you educate a woman, you educate a community.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, I love listening to a lot of biographies. When you read books by Microsoft founder Bill Gates, he talks about how the mom made him be who he is, because the mom was out there, she was empowered. And kids stick to their mothers more, they tend to, because their mothers are always there nurturing them, providing for them love mostly. And when you see an empowered woman, most of the time their kids will become empowered. So when they say charity begins at home, it begins at home. But when you have an educated mother, everything changes. It actually, the world becomes easy because you're not struggling with basics. So you're a step ahead. Likuan, one of his key transformative agendas was to ensure that he encouraged people to marry those ones who are educated. Because mostly because of patriarchy, and I think the male ego, men tend to marry down. But for Likuan, he encouraged people to marry educated women. What happened to Singapore? It changed the literacy level. Singapore is the actually, I think 98% of its citizens are literate, because every woman was like, oh, for my child to be married, they need to get education. For my daughter to do this, to get all this, because they even give a lot of incentive to couples who are working, who have gone through the higher levels of learning. They were given incentives, they were given good packages, they were given holiday tokens. So he encouraged literacy. That's what, when you see, if a society is literate, politicians will not come and tell us, do this, do this. We will not become puppets. So literacy is something that we should also work on from a personal responsibility, and also the government should also try and ensure girls from Madare, Huruma, just
The low
this,
income
yeah, the
areas.
low income, yeah, they should get education, because you find these people, they don't even meet their basic needs. So the next time pregnancy is happening, and they're not getting pregnant by older men, their peers. So that is a society that is being destroyed. That is a society that is less empowered. So if these people can be able to get empowered, because sometimes it takes a strong will to do it at an individual capability. So I feel like we should also formulate policies to ensure that these girls are nurtured, because once they become mothers, and they're alone in this world. Some end up getting into hizo stories za jaba. They actually do jaba. Saizi ukienda mtaani, when we are doing hizo volunteer work, you find that a lot of young girls, someone who's 16 years ako na mtoto, amekaa tu amechila, anakwambia nipe 20 bob, anataka jaba. But akikula hiyo jaba, akona ile imagination ya the younger child. So we should work on tapping onto that younger child, so that we should not leave anyone behind. When they were coming up with the sustainable development goals, the greatest agenda was no one is left behind. But now we don't know what's happening.
I'm curious to want to know, Esther, the day you learned that you're pregnant. What happened? What did your world look like?
You see, coming from Huruma, being pregnant at that age wasn't really a big issue, because you're like, Sinani is also having a kid. So this is having a kid. So you're like, okay, now, of course, I know my mom is going to be mad about it. Everything is going to be to change. But I mean, even Nani is hacking. So you see, your peers gives you that foundational aspect of you're gonna make it. You're gonna make it, yeah. So it was like, yeah, of course you're shocked, but then again you're like, sinani ako nayo, akona mtoto, anaishi tu, ana survive, tuta survive. I think ni ile kujichocha mtaa. Yeah, but yeah.
I like that, though sometimes that is in the crowd. But now when you find yourself alone, sometimes there's so much pressure on self, especially when you think about family. How did your family respond to it? How did your mom respond to that situation?
Of course, that was chaotic, but I think I normally say environment nurtures people. So coming from Huruma, I was like, si neighbor kona, so it wasn't. Yes, it was. Within, it was scary, but I was just willing to go with it. Yeah, because there were other options, but I was just willing to go with it because I was like, si mi peke yangu. That's why I keep on saying environment nurtures you, and I ensure that I try to protect my kids and give them different environment than the one that I had, because they normally say, show me your friends, I show you your character. So if 4 of your friends have kids, it will not be at
How do you think that girl has influenced the parent Esther is today?
She's really done a lot. She's made her be more loving to the kids, available, and because she realizes if you don't give your kids love, they become lonely. People don't know that kids become lonely, and through that loneliness, everybody reacts differently. Some withdraw, some become rebellious. So I was the rebellious kind, and it's actually made me realize you have to be there for your kids. But our parents, then it was about the basics, because coming from a humble background, it was about the basics. So they wouldn't get a lot of time for their kids because lazima nyumba ilipwe, lazima watoto some, and then those days watu walikuwa na watoto wengi go. So the society then and now it's different. Yeah, but for me, I'll say that girl has shaped this parent to be different, because we are not static, because you can decide to take what the past generation did, but or you can try and become more accommodative. You can like right now we are living in mental health arena. So if you don't take your kids to be your friends, they're gonna lack. And all human beings, they look for one thing, that is love. Even when you're loving reading, you're looking for love in the books. When you're making friendship, you're looking for love. When you go taking a certain path in terms of career, you just want to belong. So I'll advise every parent to just ensure that their kids belong, because then they didn't know. Then they were fighting poverty. Then the government was chaotic. Like the world was just chaotic. But now we live in different environments.
Your girl is now a teenager.
Yeah. Oh, teenaging in the 21st century.
How is that, being a parent to a teenager?
It's interesting because I also feel like a teenager myself. I'm still schooling. I've been schooling since I was 30.
Yeah.
So we relate very well. I feel like I have a Generation Z, I'm a millennial. So we try to complement each other. I teach her songs of our days. She keeps me abreast on songs, current songs. And it's interesting. And now I have a Generation 8, so it's going to be a very interesting family.
Yeah, and I think you when I look at that, when I look at your approach, that parenting, and with reference to a statement you made earlier that charity begins at home, there are people who home has been their source of pain, and when you think about the journey you've taken and that self-belief and self-drive, if that person is listening to you today, what would you tell them?
I'll tell them that not to give up. I'll still quote books. Because you see, when you read books, especially fictional books, even autobiographies, you will find that pain is part of uh, living. We live with pain. But how do you make it transformative, progressive? How do you let that pain impact you? Some people choose to go the negative way. You know, life is binary. It's either good or evil, positive or negative. So you decide where you're going to vibrate. So I think I've always been a positive person, but that positivity didn't just come. It came because of books. Because when you read a book, that fictional character anapitia something, but later they try to fight with their mind power, willpower, everything power, and they emerge the winners. And also books like The Winner Stands Alone by Paulo Coelho. He actually talks to your soul. So I'll encourage people to read because they make you realize, oh, it is not happening to me alone. It happened to this person, and this person became this person. I am a fan of Oprah. Oprah went through a very not so happy childhood. The mom was not around. She reconnected with the mom later. So many things happened to her. But look at Oprah now. Everybody wants to be Oprah. Everybody wants to be associated with Oprah. If she didn't work on herself, she wrote a book, The Seat of Us, the Seat of the Soul. It's
The Seat
yeah,
of the Soul.
yeah, together with Gary. And it's a very interesting book. It talks to the soul.
Oprah Winfrey in Maya Angelou.
Yes.
Okay. But now, it almost distracts me. There is a title I'm seeing here that is
What happened
What
to
happened
you?
to you? What happened to you?
That is an interesting book. It shows that you can go through traumatic experience, but if you have that willpower to overcome everything and soldier on, life becomes happy.
Yeah.
Life starts happening because you never gave up on yourself. And I think distractions are part of the world. You go through pain. Look at someone like Churchill. Churchill talks about his yesteryears, and you're like, okay, so totally different. So people focus on the brand, they don't focus on the journey. So everybody has a story. So it's how you now translate that pain. Is it going to oscillate in the positive or the negative? Are you going to talk to your soul? Are you going to work on your within so that your without can be happy? So you have to go back to yourself.
Yeah.
You have to isolate. You have to become friends with book. Just pick a book that talks to you to you as a person, and then from there it will help you drive towards a transformative journey.
Yeah.
It will help you become a better version of you.
The subtext talks about conversations on trauma, resilience, and healing.
Exactly.
Let me. There's something here on that is quite interesting. It says, through deeply personal conversations, Oprah Winfrey and Dr. Bruce Perry explore how what happens to us in early childhood influences people we become.
Exactly. So when you read the book, Oprah is actually, it's a conversational book. Oprah asking, and then the doctor trying to diagnose that traumatic experience. So trauma shapes people. There's a story that has been trending online for I think a year or so, talking about two brothers. The two brothers, they lived with a very alcoholic father, but one brother took the opposite journey from his dad, but while the other one was alcoholic. And this one, who took a different journey because he was like, I don't want to be like my father, I don't want to be alcoholic, became someone else. He's actually now the soul of the family, and he's trying to wash this alcoholic brother. So sometimes past traumas can haunt you, but you have to have that mental power. You have to go within. You have to say this I don't want this. Yesterday I was reading from one of the online bloggers about people sharing their gambling experience, and some people even committed suicide. Some are saying that they're devastated, they've gambled 1 million plus, they've taken money left, right, and center, and everybody was giving their experience. But some said they overcame. Some said, I spent 50,000 that was not mine, but that taught me a lesson. You see, so sometimes it's maybe you want a better life, so you decide, let me go do the shortcut. Or sometimes you don't, you feel like you don't have any strength.
Yeah.
You become alcoholic. Sometimes you realize, oh, if I delve into the world of alcoholism, there's nothing I'm going to gain. There's still that inner child, because everybody has that inner child. It's just that some choose to lock them away and put them somewhere in a shelf or a closet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that, because very many people, especially those coming from challenged backgrounds, their upbringing is filled of trauma. I don't want to talk about affluence because I don't know what that experience feels like. But I think people ignore the traumatic experience that children go through. I was speaking to, in one of our previous podcasts, I was speaking to a friend who was talking about this book, I think, by somebody who was a child soldier. I think it was The Kite Runner.
Yeah, it's here.
Yeah.
It's somewhere here.
And he spoke about the experiences of that child.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more and more, the more you speak about some of these things, you realize that most of, and how true this statement is, that how what happens to us in early childhood influences the people we become. And sometimes I think we ignore, and people tend to think like, this is just a child. They don't know.
Yeah.
They will overcome.
Yes, that is the problem. But you see, the world is advancing. People have realized you need therapy as young as you can be, because they realized your childhood traumas shapes you. Have you ever met someone who's very, very mean?
Yes.
It's because they have trauma. When you go to clubs, you find that most people, when they talk, they just want to be high, 24/7 high. Not all of them. Some are there for social gatherings. But some, they just want the bottle to help them escape the memories. Mind is very interesting. I've been researching about mind. Mind is like fire. It can be a good master. Sorry, a good, it's the other way around. It can be a good master or a bad servant. Yes, mind can, because it's the mind that makes people delve into drug issues, because they're escaping something. So because they don't want that thing to, unasikia mtu anasema kichwa yangu imejaa, they don't know how to have an outlet. So they bottle in, and bila kujua wanazama kabisa.
How many books do you think you've read?
Oh my God, I've never counted. But from class 4, I'm only 3.
Yeah.
There might be
Give me a rough figure.
Oh, I can't. I've never even, I think I'll need to sit down and just think. I can't give a figure, because I've read a lot of books. I've read online books. I've read a lot. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite authors that you can?
Yeah. When you want to understand matters life, Paulo Coelho is one of the best, because he's written a series of books. He's written by the River Piedra, I Sat Down and Wept. That one talks about the emotions of someone. Maybe they're conflicted, either in matters relations and what not of you. Then he's written The Winner Stands Alone. In The Winner Stands Alone, he takes you to the world of celebrity and fantasy, but he still speaks to your soul. And then he's written Zara. He's written a lot of books. And Veronica Decides to Die. This is someone who refused to get out of their mental turbulence. And for him, it's all about just having a conversation with your within world. Because once you have a conversation with your within world, it becomes harmonious with your without world. Then you start balancing. Yeah.
What tips can you give somebody who wants to read, wants to start reading?
Yeah. Well, for me, I'll say read a book that speaks to you. Because you see, we are not static. Today, I might want to gali. Tomorrow, I might want mbuta. The other day, I might, like, every time we have a need. So if you're feeling lost in whatever, because being lost is relative to everyone. Because whatever my loss is not your loss. It's not someone else's loss. So read a book that speaks to you. And keep advancing. If you want to understand financial freedom, look for books that talks on
Sometimes
matters.
just that urge to read is what is not there. Somebody, it's your mind wants, but the practice, the place to start is not there. I met a lady who asked me, how do I start to read?
It's because their mind is not settled. And then they've not even given it a try. You know, reading is not like unaamka hapo unaenda tunasema I'm going to start walking. It needs a lot of mental strength, especially if you've not lived in a world where reading is a normal thing. Yeah, because for me, I think all I understand is reading. You see, when you get lost in those books, or you go to a different world.
How would you describe your reading habits?
For me, nowadays, now I can say I am mature in terms of understanding what I want. So I normally read a book that speaks to me, to the language that I want to understand at that particular moment. Like right now, because I'm going to do international development, I cannot go start my international development course if I don't understand the African history, the predicament, and why we are where we are today. But apart from that, I'm also reading about personal development. You can see there after The Seat of the Soul, there is Becoming Supernatural by Joe. So I'm also reading books that actually make me question a lot in terms of things that I was cultured to do, things that I thought that they are the normal norms, things that I thought this is the way of life. So a lot of books have also helped me unlearn, learn, and relearn. Yes.
Do you find yourself sometimes conflicted where a book is taking you to a certain direction, but what you've always known is in a different direction? And how do you manage that crossroad?
You need to be open. You need to have an open mind. I am very open-minded. And I think being open-minded has helped me read a lot of books that are so different from what I was cultured. And it has actually made me unlearn a lot of things. Because I have actually unlearned a lot of things. And for me, things that people say, I can't do this because the world is patriarchal. I'm like, okay, what is that? What does that even mean? We are all born as individuals. Yes, you will find norms that are guiding us as a society, but norms are there to be shaken. Norms are there to have people who are a bit scandalous to change the paradigm and shift it to a different one. And that's why civilization is always evolving. How people used to live 100,000 years ago is not the way people are living now. How people used to live in the Stone Ages is not the way people during the Industrial Revolution lived. So, world is advancing. It's advancing. It's coming with their own things. Like right now, we have artificial intelligence, and people are classified as early bloomers, late bloomers, and some in the middle. In the middle, they know that something like Chat GPT exists, but they're not aware what that is. But that they just know it helps you. But if you tell them to give you a vivid description about it, they don't know. So life is all about that. And mostly you find that early bloomers are very open-minded and they don't question anything because we are all cultured differently. What you believe is the truth. A Chinese will see it different. And I think also being open minded has helped me traverse the immigration world better because I'll sit with someone who's come from Myanmar and I understand they have a civil war or they're fighting with the Rohingyas, and I'll strike a conversation. It's because curiosity, open mindedness. And then you realize people worship differently. Your God is not someone else's God. Some others have decided to become spiritual. I'm spiritual myself. And it's because of just taking in information and working what works for you best. Yeah.
Let me ask you, you've spoken about diplomacy, you've spoken about you being in as an immigration consultant. What's on your shelf on diplomacy? I can see Henry Kissinger somewhere there. Diplomacy. I can see
Condoleezza Rice.
Yes.
Nelson Mandela is also one of the most revered diplomats. There is Kofi Annan intervention. Like for me, when I look at diplomacy, it's actually a very intriguing topic. That's why I did international relations. Because now you understand how a state interacts with another state or other group of states. And that's why we have the African Union, we have the NATO, we have the EU, we have a lot of bilateral and multilateral organization and conversation that goes on day in, day out. Because diplomacy came in to end wars of wars. If we didn't have diplomacy, people would be fighting. Because when you look at formation of statehood, that is in the 1648, people were just amassing territories. So 1648 brought about the formation of states, that the Westphalia Treaty, and that's why we have states. That's why we have sovereignty. That's why you see everybody saying we want to guard our sovereignty the best we can, the best way we can. It's because it's a journey. Everything is a journey. So before that, there was no diplomacy. So people started even sending emissaries so that they can have relations. Ndio sasa sisi na tukikuwa na migingo, tuendi tu kuchukua mapanga tunaenda migingo. We sit down and negotiate. People started understanding the importance of having a dialogue instead of just using machetes, guns, just killing, destroying property, because that was a very bad way of civilization.
one of the most celebrated African leaders, Muammar Gaddafi, was a pro-African single state continent. What are your thoughts on Africa operating as a single state?
You see now,
Yeah.
it brings about the issue of what is your interest? Because Muammar Gaddafi, yes, had a very powerful vision for Africa, which was very good. But then again, he wanted to become the president of Africa. So that actually made it not really work, because look at something like European Union. That is one of the best international organization, regional organization that is doing great things in the world. They're actually taking care of their interest. So when African Union was formed, was actually it wasn't formed because we used to have the OAU. So now later they converted it to African Union. They gave it a lot of powers. They gave it they actually decided to work on bad governance. But now people start becoming greedy for power. They want to become president. 54 countries, people speaking different languages, people having different rule of laws, people divided differently in terms of religion and ethnicity. So we are supposed to collaborate and accommodate, not to collaborate, accommodate, and make someone the president of Africa. Before I read State of Africa, I was like, oh yeah, he had very, very powerful ideologies, but the years of Mohammed Gaddafi actually made him a enemy for various countries because he was supporting civil wars in other African regions. And he was even financially supporting opposition leaders to engage in coups. But later, in the early 2000s, he came up with a very lucrative idea of a one-state Africa. But that one cannot work currently. What can work is having a union that speaks the same voice when trading with other continents.
When we come slightly local, we have the East African community. We even have an East African Legislative Assembly.
Yes.
What are some of what is the advantage of having an East African community?
It's it's good to bargain your interests as a country if you belong to a bloc, because you will be having one voice. You will be having more votes to go for an interest that is not only yours, but also because when you look at the regionalism, the politics in a region, they're actually similar. What Uganda wants now, what Kenya wants now, what Tanzania wants now, what Rwanda wants now is economic empowerment. We all want that. So as a group, we will negotiate on how to trade with others. We'll negotiate on embargoes. We'll negotiate on tariffs. We'll negotiate on so many things. So I feel regionalism, actually nowadays the international scholars advocate for regionalism because as a bloc, your voice is more powerful as compared going to negotiate for better prices. Yeah, if you're sanctioned and you're in a bloc, it will be easy for you to sell your goods through country B. I'm just saying, I'm not advising.
Any future reads? What do you aspire or desire to read?
A lot. You see, every day a book is being written.
Yes.
Every day something is coming up. So I'll aspire to read something, any book that will work on my spiritualism, any book that will empower me more, and also any book that will make me understand contemporary politics in the international sphere and how we are related to each other and how to make the world a better place.
But do you have any particular title of a book that this one I want to read someday, or that one I desire to read, or this one I have bought but I have not read?
I have a couple of books that I have here that I've not read. There's one by Margaret Thatcher. It is somewhere here. I think it's here. You see, even it's still sealed. I would love to read it. I love to understand. Yeah, I love to understand. Margaret Thatcher was a formidable woman, and she actually made a lot of women believe that they can go into leadership. And she controlled not only the local politics in the UK, but she had a voice in the international community, and she was an Iron Lady. So that's a book I want to read. Maybe I'll read it while studying at the University of Cambridge, because I'll be able to relate it more. And also the Future Crimes. This, yeah, because it was given to me during my birthday, so I've not read that. Yeah.
Do you have any books signed by the authors? And
Yeah, I think my first book that was signed by an author was by Kombani, The Den of All Iniquities. I think it's somewhere here. There, yeah. And then Mailu, I loved After 4:30. David Mailu. He comes from the Kamba world. I think even, we have upcoming authors. There's this one, Jagero. He's one of the...
Oduor Jagero.
Yes.
The Ghost of 1894.
Yeah. He's an interesting writer. He writes, he inspires me. Yeah.
Now, I don't even know which one to start with. Let me start with the Den of Iniquities. This one looks very interesting.
This book, I think I read it in when was it signed? 2014, yeah, I was right. It talks about iniquities. Kombani takes you through a journey that helps you understand. I think it's more of fictional, but it's Kenyan based, and then you understand the iniquities that we have. It's like umeingia ndani. It's an interesting read, yeah. Sitaki kuwapatia spoilers.
No, but it's really interesting when you look at it. There's this guy walking, and then there's a shadow, and then there's a slum.
Yeah. Sometimes I think I confuse it with the last Villains of Molo. Yeah. Because this talks about Molo, Njoro, hata ilinisaidia nikalearn hizo map za huko. Yeah, but the Den of Iniquities, it was, yeah, I read it a long time ago, but I remember it was talking about the inequalities.
What happens after 4:30?
Hey, that one. You see even the picture, After 4:30, by David Mailu. He takes you through an interesting journey of what happens after 4:30. Because, most of the people close office at 4:30. So after 4:30, a lot of things happen in the social world. Yeah, it's interesting. The cover speaks it loud and clear.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's see. Office secretary, sex workers with unusual frankness and remarkable... Okay, fine. Read it. Get it after 4:30. It's one of your signed. Yeah. And then Wavinya. Beautiful fashion, history, and life. Passion. Beautiful passion, history, and life. This looks very interesting. Is it historical?
I have not yet read it, but I'll read it. Because you see, with books, sometimes you just buy and say, when the right time comes, I'll read you. Yeah.
All right. So what would you say generally books have done? You've reiterated and reiterated and reiterated, and sometimes it can always feel like but from a personal reflective perspective, are there things you can pinpoint and say, had it not been books?
You see, when you want to have a healthy body, you eat the right foods. When you want to have to smell nice, you put the nice colognes. Like, it is natural. It comes natural to people. When you feel tired, you sleep. So we tend to feed our physical body more than the mental body, because it's part of us. So for me, I believe books have shaped me. If it were not for reading, I wouldn't be going to Cambridge. Books gives you imagination. Books make you believe more. Books make you open. Books make you become a go-getter. Uko like, oh, the best laid plan. This person did this. We need more wine. Gabrielle Union. She talks about how nasty her life was. But look at her. She's a international actor, an icon. Everybody wants to be her. So you find that books help to mold you. Books help to make you become the best version of you. And books keep you company.
Yeah.
When you live in a world bound by distraction, you find solace. You find life in books. That's why I'm building this. I keep on telling my daughter, I just want to have a very big room with very comfortable seats. You just go there and you say, this is where I'm going to spend the entire weekend. It's ensued, so you don't leave. Once you lock, it's your off time. And I'm like, I want to do that in my 40s. I want to have my weekends just locked and just perusing through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In this world of digitization and everything going digital, there's been this debate of audiobooks and digital books versus the physical. What's your preference?
For me, I prefer, I'm a dirty reader. I'm that person naandika nasoma scribble like painting. I think I was supposed to be a painter. I don't know what happened. But I do that through books. Because if you open a book that I'm reading, let's say for instance, this one.
Yeah.
Utapata a lot of marks.
Yes.
Like I'm that person. So with the online books,
Yeah.
I don't get that. I don't get to just underline, highlight. Yes, I do get to highlight, but it's not the same as when I'm reading a physical book. And then I can carry it anytime, anywhere, haitaisha power. Simu ikisha moto ama laptop ikisha moto, my book haitaisha. Itakuwa tunayo hapo.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the biggest threats to development of many authors has been piracy. What's your take on piracy?
I was gifted a book when I was graduating. I think, yeah, you see, this one, The Audacity of Hope, The Audacity of Hope.
Yes.
This is the original
They look
one.
very different, actually.
Very. They look so very different.
They're very different.
Very, very different. I feel piracy is killing a lot of dreams in terms of people who want to write, especially in Africa. Because I don't think I can carry this book to Cambridge. They'll be like, no, you are going to prison. Look at how, you can't read.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Even the text, even
Yeah.
the typography.
This one, you read, it will not, you'll not need to squint your eyes. So this is wrong. But I just keep it for the purposes of keeping it.
Of telling people what not.
What not. Because if you look at my library, all my books, I think I've bought them at the Prestige Bookshop. I love Prestige Bookshop because they have everything that you want.
Esther.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for allowing us to delve deep into your world and sharing it with us. But I want to close with you telling us, what's your funniest reading story?
There's one. There's a series by a UK author that I really, really laughed. And apparently, because I laughed, I wanted so many people to laugh, and I gave out 3 of the books, and I was left with 1. Oh, yeah. This one, The Edge of Reason. Like this, it's a series of books, and it's funny. I don't want to tell you, but it's funny. I don't want to tell anyone about the content because I just want you to read. It's so funny. There's a movie about it also, so if you love watching instead of reading, you can watch the movie.
All right. I think that is where we close it. Go laugh and read it and enjoy it. But I look forward to hosting you again, sitting next to your shelf after
Cambridge.
Cambridge. and I really look forward. Thank you so much, and I pray you become an inspiration to very many girls out there to see possibilities that are out there, and just you believing in something that almost looked like impossible to now today living it. Personally, I would say I can attest to it because I think I've known you for 51,000 years. But we wish you the very best,
Thank you.
and what's on your shelf really desires the best for you. That is what brings the curtain to a close on this episode of What's on Your Shelf. This has been Esther, an amazing human being, one of the most self-driven people that I know. But now today, it's been so awesome to know how much she's read over the last couple of years. Oh, is it last couple of years? Her entire life. See you again on the next one. This has been What's on Your Shelf.